Hey everyone, and welcome to Hooked on Needles and Crafts. Today we're going to be doing another itty bitty knit kit that I got from Five Below. For my returning subscribers, thank you so much for tuning in, and for my new viewers, please consider subscribing, share, hit that like button, leave a comment below, and click on that notification bell for future videos. So today, you guys, we are going to take a little break and do an itty bitty knit kit. I'm trying to fit in all my Christmas kits before Christmas, although that might not happen. So let's take a look at this one. Inside this kit, you're going to get a few spools of yarn. We have a plastic needle, we have the knitting needles, we have felt stickers, as well as stuffing. So this video is only a supplement to this kit. So if you'd like to make the polar bear, then I would recommend you going online or to a Five Below and get this kit. I can't share any instructions or go into detail, but I will be going over new stitches step by step 3 times, and then I'll be explaining any other difficulties that might happen in these instructions here, and then of course we do assembly. This is a viewer request. If you have a request, please comment below and I'll add it to my list. If you don't want to wait for me to find the kit, you could always send me a clear image and send that to me via email. My info is in the description box as well as my about section. Alright, so here are the spools of yarn. It's looking like one of those 7-Eleven slushies. This is the instructional booklet. It has illustration and text and also comes with a ruler. So that's always fun. And then of course we have our pouch. I was about to say, like, I didn't see any needles, but they're here. We have our knitting needles. We have our stuffing that I'm going to put back in the pouch so it doesn't get dirty. Then we have our plastic needle here and our felt sticker. Put this in here as well as this and the needle so you don't lose it. We're going to set this aside for now. Okay. So if you need to speed up or slow down the video, go ahead and click on the gear button in the corner. There's playback options to go fast or slow. If you don't need to hear me speak, you could always lower the volume on your device and then click on the CC closed caption button. Alright, so we have 4 rectangles to do today, and it's going to be somewhat complicated because we have changing of color, which is fun but not really, because it tells you the number of rows to make, and sometimes those rows don't add up to the length, as if you've seen my last itty bitty knit kit video. Alright, so what I can suggest for you guys is to maybe do some math. We have 3 sets of numbers here, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks of color that we have to alternate back and forth. So let me pause this for a sec and come back in. Alright, so just look at the number of rows that you're working with per color and the length of the rectangle. So I would gauge with the ruler, not with the row count. You can try the row count, but I'm guaranteeing you that at the end of it, it's not going to be the same length. I would use the number of rows and to kind of guesstimate how many inches each color would be to add up to the total, if that makes any sense. Because, like I said, you can try doing the rows, but I guarantee you it's going to be off. Because how many of these have I done? I've only done, what, on this, depending on what channel, but I've done many more. My pilot channel only has a few of them, and then my regular channel, oh no, I think maybe they have the same number. I think I started with the watermelon But yeah, I've tried it over and over again, giving them the benefit of the doubt, and then the row count is always off. So just keep measuring. That's all I really can say. I mean, you can put some mathematics into it if you'd like. But at the end of the day, if it looks close to what it's supposed to look like, I think you'll be all right. You know, it's not like anyone's judging you on it. All right, I want to start with the blue. I'm just splitting this open based on the loops. I'm going to stick my cylinder in here. It's pretty hefty, so that doesn't move around. Okay. That way we can pull this and it won't be spinning everywhere. But it's not ideal, but you know, do what you can do. All right, so we have to cast on with the slip knot. It's going to ask you to measure length of tail, and you're going to need that length to sew your project. So off camera, I'm just going to go and measure out the tail that I need, and then we'll come back in and I'm going to show you how to cast on with the slip knot. All right, so I measured out my tail here. You want to keep the tail down and out of your way. You don't want to confuse it with the feeder yarn. Don't knit with this at all. Just knit with the feeder yarn. All right, so from here we're going to cast on with the slip knot. What you're going to do is hold on to this real tight here. We're going to take our middle and ring finger and hold apart the yarn like this. Take 2 fingers, we're going to lift it up and turn it down. And then with the index and middle finger, we're going to pull on this feeder yarn through that loop, creating a large knot like this. You want to pull this top part out, not the one down here, but up here. We're going to pull on it, and we're also going to push this knot towards the left thumb. This is going to minimize the amount of waste that you're making for your project. So just keep pulling and keep pushing that knot towards your thumb. Once you get to a stopping point, then you can take your thumb and index finger and just pull out that excess piece to tighten up that knot just a little bit more. You don't have to go crazy and pull real hard. You just got to put a few tugs in it, get that knot a little snug. So now we have this huge loop. To make it more manageable, we're going to pull on the feeder yarn that's attached to this spool. So pull on this feeder yarn here till that loop can handle 2 knitting needles, and then slip those in there, and then we're ready to go. You can tighten it up if you'd like. All right, so now I'm going to gather some feeder yarn. Okay, so get as many as you would like. I like to get a lot. You don't have to copy me, and then there's better ways of doing this. This is just how I do it. Okay, so what we have to do, this kit and all their other kits, it seems they're using the knit stitch a lot. The knit stitch is one of the basic stitches in knitting. So what we have to do is get our needles in knit stitch position. I'm going to show you what that is. You have to have your feeder yarn towards the back. You want to cross your needles into an X, but you want your right needle in the back, left needle on top. And then of course you want your feeder yarn always down. I mean your tail yarn always down, and then you want your feeder yarn up and back. You always want to constantly have your needles touching. See, there's a small piece of surface that's always touching. You want it always touching. All right, so let's cast on some stitches. In the instructions, it tells you that you have to have a number of stitches on here. So let's do 3 together. What you want to do is take your yarn, we're going to wrap it around our right needle from back to forward, and then still touching your needles together. We're going to pull this down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. and you want this yarn in that little crevice there between the needles. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle over the tip and back. And this is going to force the needle to push the feeder yarn through this loop. So I'll do it close up, slide it down, go over the tip and back down. See, it pushed that yarn through that loop, so we kind of created a new stitch. So we cast on stitches onto our left needle. You're going to want to pick up your new stitch, lift it off the right, and keep it on your left needle. So we have 2 stitches now. So let's create another one. Stick your needle into this new stitch. Get into your knit stitch position, which is an X. You want your left needle on top, right needle on the bottom. You want your tail end down and out of the way. You want your feeder yarn up and back. Constantly touching your needles together. You're going to wrap your feeder yarn around your right needle from back to forward. Then, still making contact with your needles, you're going to pull the yarn down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. You want it trapped inside that space between the needles. Then we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle and down its back, constantly touching the needles because that's going to force the feeder yarn through the loop like that. And now we've created a new stitch. So now we just have to transfer the new stitch over to the left needle by sticking your left needle through the new stitch and lifting it off the right needle. So one more time, you guys, stick your needle into the new stitch, get into your knit stitch position, which is an X. You have your tail yarn at the bottom, your feeder yarn up and back. You have your needles constantly touching with your right needle at the back, your left needle on top. Alright, so let's wrap around the yarn with our feeder yarn around the right needle from back to forward, constantly touching your needle. You want to slip this yarn down. You're going to feel or hear it snap into this crevice here. Then we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle, keeping contact. That's going to force the feeder yarn through the loop, creating a new stitch. So now we just have to transfer the new stitch over to the left by sticking your left needle in the new stitch and lifting it off the right needle. So you should have 4 stitches now. Alright, so now that we've done this step by step, feel free to play this part over and over again until you feel confident in doing these stitches on your own. And then I'm going to just finish the rest of the stitches required for this rectangle and we'll move on to the next step. All right. Once you get to this point now, we've done all the stitches that we needed to make. All right, you might find that just with handling, your stitches could be all contorted. So I actually just straightened that out, but if it could be like this, it could be like that, you know, however it could be. But every time you finish a row, you just want to make sure that your project grows downward. So if it is twisting, you want to make sure that your stitches all line up in a row. This is going to prevent you from getting extra stitches. So there have been a lot of comments lately about how there's extra stitches. There's no timestamps, which I hope that when you do have a problem, you timestamp where the problem is so that I can have an idea of where it's happening. But I have a feeling this is where it happens. It's usually at the end of any row because your stitches might not be straight, or your feeder yarn that might not be straight. So if you have the number of stitches you need, you have to maintain that same number of stitches unless the instructions tell you to increase or decrease stitches. But what can happen is your stitches can be turned, and somehow trying to knit all of this, you can add a stitch or lose it. Another thing that can happen is if your feeder yarn is not down and back, it could end up being up and back. So you see how we have one stitch here? I can make one stitch look like two. So if we go like this, all right, it kind of flips that loop back. So here's two loops, and then we have, you know, if you're not really paying attention, you're gonna think there's 1, 2, 3 stitches. So I have a feeling it's happening around this area here. After, it doesn't have to be the beginning round too. This can happen further down the rectangle. So what I recommend is to make sure that doesn't happen. Always make sure your stitches are straight. When you're trying to pull everything in a straight line and it's wanting to pull up, it's because your feeder yarn needs to be down and back. So now you can see all your stitches in a row, okay, with the number of stitches you need for the rectangle. So that's probably the best way to make sure you have the right number of stitches. All right, so from here, now we have to create a new row. And to do that, we're going to do the same knit stitch. The only thing that we're doing different is we're not transferring it over to the left. We're going to keep it on the right. So after you've completed this cast on, every other row afterward is pretty much just taking them all off the left needle and putting them on the right needle. So let me show you how to do that. Stick your needle into the new stitch here on the top. Okay. Get into your knit stitch position, main contact with your needles. We're going to wrap the feeder yarn around the right needle from back to forward, and we're going to pull this down, maintaining contact. You're going to hear or feel it snap. That time it snapped. Then we're going to slide the left needle down the right needle, maintaining contact to force that feeder yarn through the loop, creating a new stitch. So here's another tip. Whatever the stitch count is on this side, you want to end up on this side. So since we gained one stitch on this side, we have to lose a stitch on this side. So what you're going to do is push up your stitches, and this stitch that we just used, just flick that off your needle like that. So now we should have the same number of stitches all together. So let's do this again. Stick your needle into the next stitch up. We're going to get into our knit stitch. We're going to wrap our feeder yarn from back to front around the right needle. And then we're going to push this down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. Okay. Then we're going to slide this needle down the right and down its back, forcing the feeder yarn through the loop, creating a new stitch. So now that we have one new stitch on this side, we have to lose a stitch on this side. So again, push up your stitches carefully, and you just want to flick off that one stitch. So you should have in total the same number of stitches you started with. So let's do this one more time, you guys. Stick your needle into the next stitch up here. Get into your knit stitch position, maintain contact with your needles. We're going to take the feeder yarn and wrap it around the right needle from back to forward. And then we're going to pull this down. You're going to feel or hear it snap. That was a loud one. We're going to slide the left needle down the right needle, forcing that feeder yarn through the loop. creating a new stitch. So now that we have one new stitch on this needle, we're going to lose a stitch on this needle. So push up your stitches and carefully flick off the one stitch. Okay, so now that we've done 3 of these together, I'm just going to go ahead and go down the line, and then I'll show you what to do next. Feel free to rewind this part as many times as you need until you're comfortable doing these new knit stitches on your own. Alright, so I've completed all the stitches. I removed them off the left needle and created new ones onto the right needle. So now what do? We always have to have new stitches on the left needle in order to start a new row. So what I'm going to do is take my left needle, move it over to my right, and take my right needle, and we're going to flip it over to our left. So from here you can see that my stitches are all wonky. Like I said, after you finish every row, you want to make sure that your project is growing downward and that all the stitches are in the same aligned space. So again, the situation with the extra stitch here could be because the feeder yarn could be up like this. So you see how there's one? I'm going to turn it into 2 by just flipping this the wrong way. So now we literally have an extra one here and one here, which is a big no-no. So always, and your stitches are crawling up, so you want to make sure that you keep it down and back, but also that you keep your stitches in a straight line. That way there's no confusion with your stitches. Okay? So let me walk this through with you guys one more time. I'll just show you what I'm doing here. We're going to be doing a knit stitch on our top stitch here, and because I've gained one on the right needle, we're going to lose one on the left. So again, do another knit stitch. You gain one on the right, I lost one on the left. One more time, do another knit stitch. We gained one on the right, and I'm just going to lift this one off the left. Alright, so you should always end up again with the same number of stitches. So I'm just going to go down the line again, complete all my stitches here. Now you guys, you want to make sure you keep measurement of your rectangles. I just figured out the math and divided the shapes, the color shapes, to add up to the length that it needs to be. So I got to keep track of that. Now since we've completed this row, we got to do a new one. So transfer your left needle over to your right and flip over your right needle to your left, and we have all this wonkiness. Just make sure it's going downward and that this feeder yarn is down and back, and you're going to see that this needs to be straightened out more. So you should end up with the same number of stitches. Alright, so I'm gonna continue doing this. I might need maybe a couple more rows, and then I'm going to come back in. I'm going to show you how to transition into the white. Alright, so I think I got this around the height that I need it to be for now. I'm going to take the white yarn here and we're going to do the next color section. Okay, again, we just want to split this in half. Okay. I wish I had more of these. Let me find another cylinder. Alright, got it. We're going to cast on with the slip knot again. So this time we don't need a tail. We're just going to go down to the farthest edge as we possibly can with our ring, pinky, and thumb, and then with our index and middle, we're going to hold it apart. Then take 2 fingers, lift up, we're going to twist it down. So then we're going to take our index and middle finger and take the feeder yarn and pull it through that large loop, creating a knot. So now we want to pull this top part, not this one here floating in the middle. We're going to pull this top part while we push that huge knot towards the left thumb. So like this. And then once you get to a stopping point, then you want to pull the excess piece right here to make that knot a little snug. You don't have to pull it too hard. But then we're going to take the knot here and we want to make this loop more manageable. So we're going to pull on the feeder yarn. Enough to fit your knitting needles in there. Alright, so set this aside for now. We're going to pick this back up. So again, make sure that your stitches are in a straight line. Your feeder yarn is down and back, not up and back. See how 2 came from the 1? Alright. We need to hold this down here. We're actually going to be knitting with the white. So stick your other needle into this top stitch here. Get into your knit stitch position. We're just holding this blue one down, but we're going to slip this white onto here and we're going to make pretend, I guess not that. I guess we can't anchor it. We can anchor it with our ring and pinky while we use this white as feeder yarn. It's just a lot to handle, but with practice you can get it. But we're gonna do the same thing as if we wrapped the white around the right needle. So keep contact. We're going to slide the left down the right and down its back, forcing that white one right through that loop. You can tighten the blue one here and anchor that down for now. But we're going to, since we've added a stitch on this needle, we have to lose the stitch on the left needle. So lift it off. And since we're going to keep this blue on here because we have to transition back to blue. But yeah, here you can just continue on your knit stitching technique until you go down the row, but now we have transitioned to our white. Okay. And I'm going to keep that blue on there just so that we don't have to keep doing this cast on process over and over again. We're just going to snake the blue up as we go. So again, now that we're doing this chunk of color, we got to keep track of the size. Okay, so I'm just going to get some feeder yarn here. And these kits sometimes have the tendency to not give you enough material, so wherever you can cut waste is good. Alright, starting the next row here. I'm going to, because I want to end up showing you how we're going to crawl up the feeder yarn, the blue feeder yarn. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. Uh-oh. I dropped that. Alright, so when we get to the end of the row here, I'm going to turn this like we normally do, and I'm going to grab both the blue and white. So put your needle into this top stitch here. So like I said, we're going to wrap around with the blue and white. So just take both of them and just wrap it around and create your knit stitch here. And then you can drop the blue. We just need it to trail up the row. And then we just go about our knitting again. Okay. Apologize for the sound. Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike. I've mentioned this before, I have a small apartment, so noise carries. Okay. Completed the row, turning it. Just want to get to this other side again to show you again how to just trail up the blue. Okay. So when we do this last one, we're just going to knit these two together. So just make sure you poke through the blue and the white and you do your knit stitch. Okay. Then we're going to do this again. So stick your needle into the top stitch, and we're just going to take this one stitch to use both white and blue to do our knit stitch, and then we can just drop the blue again. So we only need it for that one stitch at the edge. And don't worry about the color mixing like that, just because when we sew everything together, we can hide it. Okay, so I'm actually just going to show you this one more time for the third time. And if you notice the transition on this side, so another tip is when you change your color, always take note of where your tail yarn is. So remember, this is your tail yarn. If it's on the left when you transition to color, the next time you transition again, make sure that your tail yarn is in the left. And I'm going to show you why right now. Because when we twist, when we flip our project over, this is the wrong side because you can see that the transition is not smooth. You have a strip of white and a strip of blue. That's just what it's going to look like on the wrong side. So again, when you're transitioning colors, just be aware of where your tail is, and you want it the same every time you change color. Otherwise, you're going to have this stripy thing on both sides, and then you're not going to have a pretty side. I mean, not that this is not pretty, but it's not ideal, you know? All right. So let's continue this row. Okay, again, you want to go through the blue and the white. and continue your knit stitch. We're going to flip this over. So one more time I'm going to show you that you stick your needle onto the top stitch here, and we're just going to wrap around with both the white and the blue to trail it up. Create your knit stitch, and then you can just drop the blue again. Okay. And then I'll complete this round and show you one more time how to knit with the white and the blue together. So okay, down the end of the row, stick your hook under both the white and the blue, and we're going to knit stitch that together, and then we can move on. So before I go back into silence, I just wanted to let you know that so this is, believe it or not, kind of minimal. You know, we are going to transition back to blue, but I think I'm going to cut off the white because that middle blue section is so much longer that doing this is shorter than having to do the cast on and make a knot and do it again. But with the next section, since it's so big, the amount of yarn that we're using to stretch up is going to take more than just casting on with the slip knot. So after I do after I transition to the blue, I'm going to cut this. You're going to see me do that. And then I'll just cast on with the slip knot again on the other side. So just explaining what I'm doing. But it's up to your discretion. If you think that you have enough yarn to continue doing it this way, then by all means, you know, or if you don't want the hassle of having to cut it and do the cast on, then just trail it up like I'm doing. And if it makes you feel better, maybe tighten it up every time you pull it so that you're not wasting too much yarn. I guess I should have pulled these a little tighter, but that's okay. But anyway, so let me just see where I'm at in size here, and then I'm going to continue the rest in silence. And then at the very end, I'll come back in, I'll show you how to cast off. Alright, so I'm back. This is almost to the size that it needs to be, but we have to cast off, so let's do that now. So to cast off, we have to knit 2 stitches on this right needle at all times. So let's knit 2 stitches. Now to cast off, we're going to lift up this first stitch here, and we're going to leapfrog it over the next. You can use your thumb to hold that stitch back, but for this stitch on the left needle, we're going to lift off the right and then lift off the left. So we have 1 stitch left on here. So again, we have to have 2 stitches on the right needle to cast off. So make another knit stitch here. We're going to leapfrog this stitch over the next. You can hold this stitch down with your thumb. We're going to lift off the right and then lift off the left, and then we're back to 1 stitch on the right needle. One more time, you guys. So knit another stitch. We're going to lift this stitch up and leapfrog it over the next. Use your thumb to hold the stitch back. We're going to lift it off of the right and lift it off the left. So just keep repeating this until you reach the end of the line, and then I'll show you what to do next. Alright, so I did all the stitches off the left needle. We have 1 stitch left on the right needle, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to cut about 1 inch or so. Then we're going to yarn over, and then we're going to leapfrog this last stitch over the yarn over, and then we're going to pull this needle all the way out, and then we're going to tighten this up by pulling on it, creating a knot, and then we're done with this rectangle. So again, we'll be able to hide these edges, so don't worry about that, but we're going to set this aside because I'm going to do the next 3 squares. So the technique for making the next 3 squares are the same. What you want to do is make it the length that it's asking you in inches. So as long as you get the stitch count right and the length right, then we'll have no issues sewing everything together. So we have the red rectangle, and then we have the 2 smaller ones that are mostly blue and one with a few strips of white. So when we come back, I'll have all these ready and we can assemble our polar bear. Alright, so I have all the rectangles needed to assemble the polar bear. So let's go in and get ourselves our needle. We're going to work with the large rectangle first. So we're going to fold this up. And I want to take this thread here. And we're going to go in and out on the edge. So when you're doing this, we're on the clean side. I'll show you what to do on the other side so that you can't see all this stuff here. So I'm going to just use straight stitching, which is going in and out of the rows. Okay, I'm gonna go back up. I think we have enough to go back up, go across, and go down. So I'm gonna weave this back up. Okay, and then we're gonna leave this end open. However, I am going to weave in and out of the side, just one of the sides, not both, because I want to sew the other edge together. So make sure it's running the side and it's not pulling. And then we're going to do this. So when we sew this together, just make sure you put your needle inside of those stitches and all that so that we can hide those I don't know what you call them other stitches. And this time, because I'm kind of being more mindful of it, I'm doing this one by one. Okay, so now I'm going to just take this opportunity to make a knot. All right. So the next thing that we have to do is turn this inside out. So let's do that now. And then we're going to put the stuffing in here. So I'm going to pull this out. Now I want to save stuffing for the arms, so I would try to gauge how much you think is going to be able to fit in here. I like to break it up so that I can control how it looks. If it's all in one piece, it's really hard to shape it. Okay, let me just double check if we're going to be using stuffing anywhere else. I can't imagine it being anywhere else. Oh my gosh, you know what's crazy? Just looking at this, I don't think it has us making, we're missing 2 squares for the ears. We'll have to deal with that later. Alright. So I'm going to have to take some of this leftover blue because I don't have any more blue to sew. Alright. So I'm going to go in here. We're going to sew these 2 edges together. Oops. Short-lived. Alright. Double knot. Alright, now we're going to make a gather stitch. So you just have to weave this in and out of your stitches. Alright, once you're all the way around, then we can pull this to scrunch it up. Okay. Then you just have to tie your knot. Go through one end, come out the other. cut this flush to the surface. You can squeeze it to make that disappear. So we have our first part of our polar bear. Now let's do the arms. So we have to thread this up. I'm going to do one here and then one off camera, but we're going to fold this in half, pretty side on the inside, and then I'm going to leave this part open, but we're just going to sew down the side here. And then when we get to the white parts, we're just going to round the edge when we sew. Right, then flip this inside out. And then we're going to put our stuffing in here. Alright, so we're going to sew the arm right at the edge of this right here. Then I'm going to tie my knot. Go one inside, out the other. Alright, so we have one arm sewn. This is kind of long. I'm going to do the other one off camera, and then we're going to come back in and deal with the ear. I think we're going to have to use this. The crazy thing is that it doesn't really tell us any instruction on this. But but we'll figure it out. All right, so I figured something out. So with the white that I had left over, which isn't much, I have an 8-inch tail. So measure 8 inches. Then we're going to cast on with the slip knot. Okay, then tighten this up, pulling the feeder yarn. All right. Now you can do this any way you'd like. I just made up something and hoped it worked, and it did. So, all right, we're gonna knit 6 stitches. Okay. And then I think I knitted 5 rows, if not 4 rows, before I cast it off. So let's see. So let's call this row 1. Row 2. Row 3. Okay. So I guess we're casting off at row 4. All right, so remember to do the 2 stitches. And comment below, let me know how much white you have left. As you can see, I'm really stretching this one. Okay. Then I'm going to take this and thread it up. Now, because I did it tightly, it's like naturally curving, and that's fine. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to weave in to where it's curving, and I'm going to do a gather stitch. I'm going to pull this, and it's going to automatically kind of create this semicircle. Like that. And I'm just going to attach this onto the head. Okay, now I'm going to come back here and find my spot to tie a knot. Okay, so hopefully this worked out for you with that. We're going to now wrap the scarf. Let's see, I'm going to sew this. I'm going to weave it in and out of the scarf so that we can tuck this away. So just go in and out of the rows. Okay, and then I'm going to see what I'm going to do with this one. I think I got to do the same thing. So I can't wrap it the way they have it, but I am going to sew it in place. So just cross your ends here, and we're going to weave this up and down the row. And then where it crosses, I'm just going to make sure that I sew it all together. Okay, and then from here I'm just going to tie my knot. And if you don't want it to slip off your bear, you can sew around part of the body. Go back in. Random spot on the other side. All right. Then we have to stick on our eyes. So I'm going to do the mouth first and center that. Press down for a few seconds very firmly to make sure that the adhesive is sticking to as much of the surface as possible. You could take a very fine needle and thread and sew around the edges, but I just stick them on and hope for the best. And we're going to stick on the eyes. Alright, so there you have it, you guys. This was very, it got really complicated in the end. They didn't show us how to do the ear, but hopefully I was able to make something up and help you guys make up the ears as well. Comment below, let me know how it went. So now I'm going to get back to my, I have a Stitch Santa to make. I have 2 more Nightmare Before Christmas characters to make, and then the Christmas holiday will be over and I'll be able to hop back on to some more itty bitty knit kits for you guys. Alright, so thank you so much, you guys, for watching. This is Hooked on Needles and Crafts. Please share, like, and subscribe for future videos, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks. Bye.